Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is June the 25th, and we are rolling live over here on rumble.com/Kyle. You are also seeing us on Twitter and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, all of you. Thanks for all of the American radicals coming in from Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle's podcast, joining us over on Rumble. I saw that raid come on in the pirate ship. Don't forget to like this video at some point. You don't have to like it right now. If you don't like it right now, that's fine. Wait until you do. And if you guys like what you hear, if you're hearing information that you're not hearing somewhere else, share it. Share it out there. Whether you're listening to us on Apple or on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, whether you are listening to us on Rumble or any of the video platforms, share it. Let people know what's going on out here. We like to grow this thing up, but mostly we like to get some information out to the public. I'm going to do something a little different. I don't normally do this. We were at 990 five-star reviews over on Apple. Well, mostly five-star reviews. We got some really clever people in our listener audience, which I'll share with you later on this week. Folks, we're at 990. I've watched it climb and drop and climb and drop. We're trying to push over that 1,000 mark. So I want to do something different. I want to read a review up front for those of you that are not used to hearing it. Here is our five-star review of the day, coming from Free Patriot Tim. It's not his first review being read. 5 stars. It says, "Hey, Kyle, I'm a daily listener. I share links to your show on Podbean and Apple far and wide with friends and family and friends. I don't know how you could possibly only have 957 listeners on Apple. I'm here, mister. I know y'all are there. I know, because I can see the numbers. There's thousands and thousands of you that listen every single day. We get the downloads and the information. We are almost certainly being squashed a little bit over on Apple. So I would ask you up front, if you guys have the time and you've never written us a 5-star review and you listen to our show, punch one in. It doesn't have to be long. I love to read it. And moreover, I love to hear what you guys have to say about the show because all of you are funny and clever and interesting people with all kinds of stuff to share. Now, one of the things that we do really well here on the Kyle Seraphin Show is we lampoon the fools at my ex-girlfriend, the old FBI. And we're going to do that first thing today. Today's going to be an episode talking about the freedom of speech, the First Amendment, specifically Julian Assange is free. What does that mean? There's a lot of stuff going on, and I do think it is a shiny object. You guys aren't going to be surprised. I think they're dangling out something to distract us. Let's start off with a thanks to our friends at the Patriot Cooler Company. They're in Houston, Texas. It's really hot in Houston. It's really hot out in Austin, around where I live. It's time to get yourself a Patriot Cooler if you don't have one. PatriotCoolers.com. Use the promo code Kyle. And we're talking about FBI people at the beginning of the show. This is my original OG 2017 issue Patriot Cooler. I bought this thing well before I ever thought about being on a podcast. When I was doing surveillance work for the FBI, I picked that sucker up and it rolled with me in and out of my office and in and out of our surveillance work. And one of the things that you need when you do surveillance is a cup of coffee that stays hot, a cup of water that stays cold, and you need a pee bottle. And I used to always leave my pee bottle on the tables whenever I would do the dog and pony shows for senior executives in the FBI. We're going to be making fun of an FBI executive in just a second here because I just find them funny. But my Patriot Cooler joined me when I used to do this kind of work. And you guys can get your own. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code KYLE. It's not even like an ad read, is it? Because it's just a story about what's funny. All right. So Where we're going to go with this, we're going to be talking about the presidential debates. I think the clear contrast that happens on the freedom of speech specifically, and the Biden administration quashing that. We're going to be talking about some of the stories that are getting covered up, specifically the Biden administration buying off their voters to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. And you guys know what I'm talking about, but we're going to get there. And we're also going to talk about some international news because Julian Assange is free. He is now out of Bellmarsh prison, which is outside of London. And the implications are pretty intense for this world, but I do think it is a distraction about the bigger issues. So that's where we're going to go. Now you know. Let's get started right away. Prosecutors, this is Jack Smith, the special counsel, is basically arguing for a stronger gag order on Donald Trump. Now, this has been going on for days. They do it in each of the venues, but Eileen Cannon down in Florida is one of the people that is evaluating the claims and the possibilities of increasing the gag order on a Donald Trump. There's some real problems with this. The argument is essentially that his rhetoric is inflammatory, but his rhetoric is pretty well contained within political speech. There's no crime involved in the things that he's saying. And so they are saying that he's saying things that are not preferable. I think this is like a smack in the face for those of us that care about liberty. Why the ACLU is not out there making arguments on behalf of Donald Trump and backing this play is beyond me. Well, it's not. But they used to care about this kind of stuff. You're allowed to be incendiary. You're allowed to be inflammatory in the United States. The government is actually not supposed to have any purview over your speech, including when you are innocent until proven guilty. There's a story that Julie Kelly is running around with, crying about how the federal government put cover sheets on the classified documents or the allegedly classified documents that they found at Mar-a-Lago. And this is a non-story, folks. Don't let this stuff distract you. They have to do that. That's the policy for protecting classified information trumps what's going on in this, and it doesn't interfere with. You'll be shocked to find that every law enforcement officer, this is going to be not news to you, but every law enforcement officer that goes on a search warrant takes evidence and then puts it in something and changes where its location is. And sometimes they have to add things like cover sheets. Sometimes they have to add things like an envelope. They take, dirty underwear and they put it in a baggie, and the baggie has markings on it with words that you write with a marker. They put guns in boxes, and then they put zip ties on the guns. Sometimes they put zip ties down the barrels of the guns to secure them in place. The idea that you are going to physically alter the stuff that you take is, of course, part of what's going on. It doesn't change the type that is written underneath it to put a cover sheet on top of something. This is a non-story, but it's more propaganda work. And it is part of this culture of spinning outrage. The left is spinning it about what they call violent and inflamed rhetoric. They're actually claiming that Donald Trump is responsible for a supporter, just because 50% of this country supports Donald Trump, or close to it. He's not responsible for the actions of these people, nor should he be. They're claiming that because some guy went on an unhinged AR-15 and nail gun. Do you remember this guy that was killed? He was killed, I think, in Ohio. He goes out and attacks an FBI office in the most logical way possible. He has a firearm, but he chooses to use a nail gun, then gets gunned down. So we'll never hear what his story was. That guy, that's the reason why Donald Trump should not be able to speak. I'm just going to throw this on the screen here, just kind of casually. This is the First Amendment. This is actually part of our founding document. This was the compromise between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, allowing us to actually sign our Constitution into law. Now, we talked about this last week, and I highly recommend you guys go listen to the Government and Gangsters episode if you did not hear about how our constitutional republic has been slowly and systematically dismantled. It is not the government that our founders intended. And that goes back to the 19-teens, 1913. That is a big, big step away from what was created. But these First Amendment liberties pre-exist our government. That's the whole point. You'll notice this First Amendment doesn't say that Congress has granted a right and therefore they have the ability to regulate it. No, it says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The same thing. They will make no law respecting the abridging of the freedom of speech or of the press. These are both relevant today, talking about Julian Assange. The right of a people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances, that will always exist. This is a right that the people have. Congress is not allowed to make laws about free speech, period. I have a massive problem when a judge is going to usurp the authorities of the founding document that they raised a hand and swore that they would defend, that they would truly interpret, and they're going to try to tell someone that they cannot speak in the middle of a campaign season, of all things, a time when speech actually means the most, right? The whole point is that if you want to get your message across, it's an excellent vehicle for demonstrating tyranny right now, though. And it is the sharp contrast, because we cannot forget right now, two imperfect vessels, and I will continue to say that because I believe it to be true. Two imperfect vessels are going to be on the ballot for president, and also RFK, I guess, in some places. But these imperfect vessels represent one who said, let's lock her up. Let's take my political opponent and put her in jail. And then didn't. Took no steps to do so. Did not carry through on that promise. Why? Because it undermines American authorities as a just and righteous society. And one guy who claimed to be the adult in the room, who said, I'm a senior statesman and I've been doing this a long time and I've been honorable and I'm going to step up. And I'm a Catholic, by the way. This guy, Joe Biden, steps up. And the first thing that they do is start attacking the small fish with the government going after J6ers. The smallest fish, including redefining what the Justice Department is willing to do, going after misdemeanor offenses. And then served a search warrant at his political rival's house. And the idea that Joe Biden was not briefed on that is laughably stupid. There's no chance. Merrick Garland said he personally approved it. He was appointed by Joe Biden. He was the choice of Barack Obama to be in the Supreme Court. They took a political actor and they dropped him into a place where he could do the most damage, and he is allowing the evil, and they are truly evil, the evil people that run the Justice Department free reign to do whatever their wildest fantasies involved. And that includes locking up and jailing political opponents, from the smallest fish to the most indigent people who have nothing, that went to the Capitol on January 6th and got riled up. And there's some real good reasons why that might be. And then also one of the most powerful people in this country, a former president, a billionaire. If they can go from billionaire to person who cannot even afford their own attorney, everybody's on the list. We're all on the menu now. That's why free speech has to exist, because if we can't talk about this, then there is only one other reaction, and that is the worst reaction. If you are not prepared to hold your bleeding family members who are dying in your arms on your front lawn, then civil war is not a game that you want to play. Civil wars are disgusting and ugly. It's not going to be like the people from New York are going to try to march down and take over Alabama. We are not going to see a civil war that is broken by states. It will be fought neighborhood to neighborhood and house to house if this country falls apart that way. And it falls apart if we cannot speak. We must be able to speak. It's of paramount importance. And so these gag orders are antithetical to American liberty. And they're incredibly dangerous to think that a political candidate can't talk. Now, one of the things that made me kind of tickled about this, and so anyway, the long short of it is they think that his statements are dangerous for the armed law enforcement agents, that there have been death threats to the agents working on the Hunter Biden case because of what Donald Trump has said. It turns out in America, you should still be responsible for your actions. And if someone is getting you riled up because they are angry, I'm going to show you some really wild people later on, some wild Democrats. You don't hear any need to censor these folks, regardless of how stupid or weird they are. And there should be no need to censor Donald Trump. Trump's lead defense attorney has argued that he's just doing critiques of his political rivals, which is required for him to be able to run for office, Joe Biden and the Justice Department, and they are having a chilling effect on President Trump because they're trying to modify his bail restrictions and shut him up. Now, the counter argument is that the special prosecutor's office is saying that he's using his platform, but he's saying things that are manifestly false. And that he's saying lies, that the FBI is coming to do violence to your family. And that's way over the line. The evidence is pretty overwhelming. The FBI may come and do violence to your family. There's a reason why I tell you that I think the FBI is far more dangerous as a former FBI agent, as someone who speaks to retired FBI agents that cannot believe what has happened in this country. The FBI is far more dangerous than something like the CIA. You guys know that Ryan Maddow was our producer for a while. He and I still talk. And he sent me something the other day. And he said, when you know, it's always the CIA. And sometimes it is the CIA doing things. But as someone who has spoken to folks in the CIA, I don't think Ryan knows anybody that's ever worked in the CIA. People in the CIA are far more scared of the FBI because the CIA at least has to make up a cover story and try to do things plausibly deniably. They have to go out there and at least try to pretend like they didn't do the thing that they do. And they generally don't operate in the United States, with small exceptions. The FBI will do it openly. They will bang on your door. They will let all your neighbors know. And sometimes they will kill you in your driveway or in your house. Right? Do I think that that's what these agents set out to do? No. Do I think that these killings are generally justifiable underneath the deadly force policy? Yes, they are. That doesn't make them right. It means they chose a tool that they know that they can use. I'm telling you, if the Bureau comes to my door and they don't have the courtesy and intelligence just to call me, I'm going to the door with my hands over my head. I'll be shirtless because that's how I sleep, wearing nothing but Suspendables Ranger panties. They're going to have to kill me unarmed. I hope that never happens. That is a real fear. That's why I don't sleep. That's why there's always bags under my eyes, folks. And trying to shut down a former president because of this stuff. This is how it happens. It starts with shutting down your ability to speak. It's why I continue to do this show. Whether anybody, feels good about some of the things we say. Some of the stuff we say is a little bit on the line. But I believe it's accurate. That's what we're interested in. Accuracy. And these people are dangerous. Let me tell you something about dangerous people that run. What you saw on the screen there, I'm going to throw it back on the screen just for a moment. This is coming from ABC's reporting, talking about the gag order. The person in the bottom right there is someone known as Richard Frankel. Now, I don't know Richard Frankel personally. He retired just before I got into the Bureau. But I listened to him talk, and he's utterly unimpressive. He's a former special agent in charge of Newark. I read his resume. It looks like all the other Bureau executives. Basically, minimal investigative experience. He touted the arrest that happened in his division, of which he basically didn't have anything to do with. All the agents running around there. He did his 20 years, and he got out. Good for him. And he's talking about the Mar-a-Lago search, and he basically has nothing to add to it. Says that because they got a search warrant, it lets you know how really serious it is. I would say the opposite. Anyway, he's a senior executive in the FBI. What I'd like to do, and one of the things that I continue to do, is point out that these clowns who go out and taunt I was a former assistant director of counterintelligence, I was this, of that, they should not have credibility in the public space. Period. And yesterday we brought up this woman. Her name is Catherine Swike. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Oh, that's not the right slide. There it is. This is her publicly posted resume. She puts it on her website. This is not something that I'm doxing. I'm letting you know. She posted this, not me, to the internet where you can find it. And I've shared it to a few people. I also had several former FBI employees reach out and let me know how much BS is on this resume. What a, let's say, complicated relationship that this woman has with the truth. And so I just threw some of the things on there. She was an attorney in Cook County. She was an Illinois prosecutor outside of Chicago or in Chicago. You know she loves guns, right? And she describes herself, this is my favorite, as an attorney and former FBI executive. Not a retired FBI agent like normal people do because they think there's credibility there. She wanted you to know that she was an executive in her resume. And she provides consulting services related to security, compliance, and leadership. I have absolutely no idea what she knows about any of those things. But based on talking to people who worked with her, she was what we call first office agent out of Milwaukee division. And she was there for doing that for like 5 years. Now, during that time, she spent almost 6 months in the academy. So she was there for 4.5 years. That's her investigative experience. During some of that time, she actually lists that she was an acting supervisory special agent because every single thing on this resume is geared towards showing how much management she had. None of it is showing how much experience she had in doing the work she did. The amazing thing is after 5 years working in the FBI, some of which was as an acting supervisor, she became a supervisor, and she developed a complete rewrite of the curriculum for the classroom FBI surveillance for new hires with zero professional experience. She also did one of those joint CIA FBI classes and did some training. When you see these people, I want you to know that they are not worth hiring, the public sector coming into private sector, most of you are starting to realize this. If you run a company and someone is coming to you with a resume that looks like this, that is full of managed a team, developed and delivered, and none of it has anything to do with the actual function of being a criminal investigator coming out of the FBI or an intelligence analyst from the FBI, you are now going to see how absurd and stupid these people are. And this woman is ridiculous. I'm also told the funniest thing is she runs a whole podcast called Stop the Killing. And she wrote a book called Stop the Killing, How to End the Active Shooter Crises. We talked about it yesterday. There are like 100 people on the biggest year in recent memory that are killed in active shootings, which is a lot of people. But statistically, it's nothing. There are 8 times as many people that are beaten to death, and more people die falling down stairs. There's not a whole podcast on how to not die falling down the stairs. Probably nor should there be. This woman did everything she could to get into management as soon as possible, and she ran around and she did all this nonsense, and she claims that she developed the active shooter program for the FBI, which is also hilarious. The reason I'm telling you this is because she is showing up on newscasts as an expert about guns right now, and I want you to know that we can immediately debunk this. I was told by her firearms instructor that she was trash, that she couldn't shoot. Go figure. Female FBI agents are notoriously bad shots. One of the best shots that I ever worked with was also a female. So there's that weird moment. But a lot of them can't handle a firearm. And it's one of the reasons why the FBI actually moved down to the 9mm. Weak hands and the inability to control recoil on a 40 cal. This woman, who knows nothing about guns, apparently wrote the FBI's active shooter protocols, even though the FBI's active shooter protocols are actually coming from the the Texas State University. It's what's called ALERT, and it's a federal standard. These are the classics. I just want you to know that these people will lie on their resume, and they will lie to your face, and they will go out there and they will use these as credibility in the media. And this is just a classic move of it. We're going to actually talk about more of it later on. So I just wanted you to touch on this little one, and also that sort of validation. There's a lot of former and retired FBI agents that listen to this podcast that share stuff with me privately. And it's always funny when I name somebody. I don't have to know a lot about them to look at their resume and know they're full of it. So there you go. All right, let's get into the Julian Assange story. This is coming from CNN. Julian Assange is flying back to Australia after a 12-year legal battle. It has been a wild time to watch. He was first running, then he was hidden in an embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Then he served close to five and change years now out of this Bellmarsh prison in London. And now he's getting what would be referred to as a sweetheart deal. He had 18 counts in the indictment against him for violations of the Espionage Act and facilitating the classified document transfer to WikiLeaks, his website. And he's going to basically plead guilty to 1. I think that's probably good. This is long in coming. It also feels, like I said, a dangly, shiny thing that is going to distract, something that they can talk about how good they did. Because we have a debate coming up in 2 days, don't we? With a guy that would like to be able to tout any accomplishment he can to those that are on the left, that are on the side of liberty or freedom, or like sort of have this general idea about a freedom of the press. And this is red meat for them. Here's CNN's reporting on what is happening and where he's going.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is expected to appear in a US courtroom on Wednesday to accept a plea deal with the Justice Department, but it won't be in New York or Washington. The 52-year-old Australian is heading to the Northern Mariana Islands after spending the past 5 years in a London prison. He's expected to plead guilty to a single count in one of the largest ever leaks of classified US government material. In return, Assange will avoid spending any time in an American prison and return to Australia a free man.
Throughout the years of Julian's imprisonment and persecution, an incredible movement has been formed. A movement of people from all walks of life, from around the world, who support not just Julian and not just us and our family, but what Julian stands for, truth and justice.
So there you have it. That's from his wife, Stella, who's been a stalwart supporter and traveled around, done lots of podcasts and interviews and so on. The man is finally free. He's 52 years old, as you just heard, and he's going to plead guilty to 1 of the 18. And he doesn't even have to step foot in the United States. What does that even mean? He's going to these Mariana Islands to go and do it. There's going to be a federal judge there somewhere that he can go and make this sort of a plea. Now, this is conditioned on a judge actually accepting that this is an acceptable plea deal, but we can expect that's probably the case. He doesn't even have the faith in our system to step foot on U.S. soil, at least like significant U.S. soil. Normally, these things would be handled where they were charged. If my memory serves, it was the Eastern District of Virginia that brought these charges. So theoretically, he would have to face something in EDVA. It's just outside of D.C. And he doesn't even want to do that. And I don't blame the man. I don't. Weirdly, he's going back to Australia, which is a lockdown island that does not necessarily have a real good record on freedom. They're essentially like Canada at this point, where they've gone full commie. And that's preferable to stepping in the United States to a Julian Assange. Now, the real crime here, the biggest piece was facilitating the movement of classified documents from Bradley Manning, who was a low-level clown in the Army, who then became a transgender activist. Very weird, right? And that was the issue, that they facilitated the password hack, that they facilitated the uploads and the movement of. But the real problem with all of this stuff is that the press is actually allowed to publish classified documents, as we keep talking about here. This is the problem with the Trans Manifesto being censored. You're supposed to be able to do that in this country. The press is supposed to be free above all else. That's the First Amendment. That's why Trump should be able to say any wild thing he wants, as long as he's not directly calling for violence. He's not violating that. He's not inciting, which is a crime. So how on earth are we going to fight this? The second thing is prior restraint, which is to say that New York Times v. United States, 1971, goes back and tells us they were classified documents. These are the Pentagon Papers leaks. This is not unprecedented stuff. Now, their argument is that he was basically facilitating those leaks and helping the person that was trying to take something. Bradley Manning, definitely in violation. By the way, is it not ironic that Bradley Manning went to prison and got out in the time that Julian Assange's ordeal is still ongoing? The real criminal there was someone who was a low-level, analytical type enlisted guy in the Army, moving things that he didn't understand and probably had no ability to do it. And I talked to George Hill before we started because he wanted to weigh in on this as well. And the thing that's most interesting to George, and I think it's also worth bringing up, is that the biggest black eye that the WikiLeaks drops had was on the U.S. State Department, which was being run by Hillary Clinton at the time. And that this all goes back to leaked cables. It wasn't about human assets or intelligence. Even though we act like we care about that, you can see how much the Biden administration, the Obama administration really cared about those folks that were over in those war zones, Iraq and Afghanistan. You saw the disastrous pullout, the number of people that have been executed wholesale. My friends who run some of the biggest source networks for the U.S. intelligence community in Afghanistan said that they were 50-50 on the numbers of people they could get out and the numbers of families that were left to the Taliban to be absolutely slaughtered in the most horrific ways possible. So we have to consider that piece too. This was about optics in some ways, right? It was about looking bad and the fact that the ugly and the weak and the incompetence was being exposed. And it turns out it always goes back to Hillary, doesn't it? So that's always fun to see. Sort of sad, but it is the nature of where we're at right now. This stuff is a shiny object, I think. I think it continues to be because it makes me look abroad. I look overseas now and I'm seeing some things that I don't want to pay attention to because I'm not really interested in what happens in Russia per se, for the sake of Russians. I'm not interested in what happens in Ukraine for the sake of Ukraine, but I am interested in what it does to the United States and where that argument is going to be made. I'm interested that it is a potential, talking point in a debate that is coming up very soon that we're going to see. So all of these things kind of lead me down the road of like, all right, well, what are they hiding? What are we not seeing when this goes on? And some of the things we're not seeing is that this is actually a real pattern of attacking journalists broadly and widely. We're going to get Trevor Aronson on this program in not too long. I wanted to kind of throw this on the screen here. This is from The Intercept the other day. This is a couple days old now, but it's not old news. In fact, it's actually ongoing news. This is the story that Trevor Aronson wrote about federal prosecutors going after him for reporting, this seems problematic, doesn't it, that federal prosecutors out of D.C. are involved in a terrorism case in Detroit. That happens sometimes when they bring in the national security types because only certain people can prosecute certain types of crimes for DOJ. And they're basically attacking a journalist that has been calling out the weaponized government long before you and I were talking about it. He wrote a book called The Terror Factory, which you guys can check out, and hopefully he'll give us kind of the background on that soon. He's agreed to be on the program, so it's just a matter of lining up schedules. And he sits on the political left. There are a lot of things that I imagine that he and I do not agree on politics, but we have a friendly relationship because we are interested in truth and the facts. Now, when we get those facts, we may see them through a different lens. That actually is a really American thing. But you cannot argue otherwise that the FBI doesn't have what the boys and I call the playbook, right? That so-called like the hashtag playbook that we put out there when we're talking about these terrorism cases. It doesn't matter whether you're a so-called domestic terrorist with a white supremacy agenda or you're a so-called Muslim terrorist who has some sort of jihadi agenda. If you actually can't do the things that you said you would want to do, and a Fed has come in and said, here, we're going to help you out. And by the way, we're going to give you all of the money and the resources and the capabilities. Here's all of the rope you need to hang yourself. They're creating the terrorism that they're destroying. I want to get a little deeper into this article, and I actually want to get into some of the filings that are being made by the U.S. Justice Department in this case, because they're unsettling to me in a big, big way. Before we do that, let's say thanks to my buddies over at Catholic Vote. Some more stories you guys are going to want to see. They are in the fight for faith, family, and freedom, so CatholicVote.org. If you want to support them, which is actually supporting directly our podcast here, CatholicVote.org/give. You can give to them. They're pushing the agenda for Donald Trump, if you are interested in that. They are trying to get Catholics out to vote. If we got all the Catholics in America to vote for Donald Trump, this election would be over. It would be locked up. Unfortunately, there are still some of them that have that weird nominal idea that because Joe Biden claims to be a Catholic, he's part of the team. And if you guys have missed out on today's loop, really good stuff in there. There's an article about the Supreme Court hearing the challenge to a Tennessee law about transgender kids. There's another one about the majority of U.S. Jesuit universities promoting Pride Month. If you're sending your kids to Catholic schools thinking they're coming out with a Christian education, not if they're in the Jesuit schools, it turns out. And another one that's kind of interesting. It'll be not news to those who worked in law enforcement, but the federal government, IRS, Homeland Security, and other local police agencies can get access to your mail. So they have a whole story about what are called mail covers. Worth your time if you guys want to read the loop. Go to CatholicVote.org, whether you go there and donate or whether you go there and you simply are interested in getting a little bit more information from the loop. Do both or do either, whatever suits your fancy. Let's do this. Let's do this dig into this. Okay, so here's the filing. It's Trevor Aronson situation. Now you'll notice that his name is not listed as the plaintiff or the defendant. The U.S. government is bringing this case against someone called Avs Mohammed Nasser. And in the second paragraph, the first line, journalist Trevor Aronson was recorded on phone calls. I think there's upwards of 50 jail phone calls since February of 2023. Why is that? It's because Trevor Aronson is interested in what is going on with this guy. And in the argument, in the filings, which I think are a complete violation of where this First Amendment sits. We read it earlier, so I won't read it again. This is little snapshots from that filing, which is about 23 pages long, including the cover sheet. It says, unlike news articles, this is a federal prosecutor in the national security realm making this argument. Unlike news articles, which are often brief, cautious, and offer a superficial examination of an event, documentaries are powerful vehicles for presenting a narrative, evoking strong emotions, and creating a lasting impression on the subject matter. Can we just take a deep breath and hear that there is an argument here that documentaries are dangerous and that the government wants to basically allow only certain people information? This is that tyrannical mindset that we are seeing. When I say that the Justice Department was absolutely never Donald Trump's animal, it was always run by these people. These people predated Donald Trump, and they will continue to exist after. And they all seem to serve the same agenda: censorship, totalitarianism, trying to craft narratives. They think that they have a right to decide what it is that you can see because you are too dumb to make your own decisions. This is the mindset. Meanwhile, we have just absolute mediocrity, like that woman I showed you, a senior executive at the FBI who undoubtedly dealt with DOJ people on a regular basis. These mediocre people think that they are the ones who should be the keepers of the truth and divvy it out the way that they want. This is why we talked about the werewolves and the villagers yesterday. When a minority has secret knowledge and the ability to sway, they can change the information battle, not with superior numbers, not even with superior access to truth, not being more accurate. They have simple They have knowledge, and that is a weapon in and of itself because they can dole it out when they want to, and they can weaponize that information. That's what the intelligence agencies are doing right now. That is the information industrial complex, the censorship industrial complex that guys like Taibbi and Schellenberger have been talking about for the last couple years. Trevor Aronson wrote a book, The Terror Factory. It was considered required reading on my surveillance team. Producer Phil first recommended it to me. You guys remember Producer Phil. And the reason he recommended it is because he had thousands and thousands of hours of experience, hundreds and hundreds of days of going on absolute BS terrorist surveillances, where we were sent out on operations to go watch the so-called terrorist, only to find out that the said terrorist was nothing of the sort and had no ability to conduct a terroristic activity without the complete hand guiding by the FBI. Financially, materially, they were unable to do any of the things that they had said on an online chat group. In fact, if any of you are involved in online chats, and I don't know where these happen, but apparently there are still chat groups that people are out involved in. If you are in that, not our chat like that is over here on Rumble, not this chat, right? That one, there it is. It's really hard for me to look in the mirror and try to figure out which way to point, by the way. Not our chat, but the chat rooms that are out there in the world where they are talking about radical lunacy, including things like supporting ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Al-Shabaab or any of the other sort of like radical ideologies. If you're involved in that and somebody is pushing all the dumbest ideas, there's a very decent chance that person is involved either on the payroll of or specifically working for a federal agency, whether they be a confidential human source or whether they be what we call an OCE, an online undercover employee. Trevor Aronson was calling this stuff out over a decade ago. His book has been out for more than 10 years. His TED Talk had millions of views, at least upwards of 1 million the last time I saw it 2 years ago. And we continue to refer people to it. It's like 10, 15 minutes of a TED Talk where you can listen to the playbook as described by someone who saw it long before I even worked for the Bureau, probably about the time that producer Phil was seeing it. It's because these people are indigent, they are destitute, they are friendless, sometimes they are mentally ill. They are incapable of carrying out the so-called terrorisms that we keep hearing about. But that doesn't stop the federal government from roping them in, pumping them up with a lot of energy, some finances, and affirming all of their worst ideas. It's called the Terror Factory because they create the terror. The FBI is doing it. So how do you trust an organization that does that? The answer should be you shouldn't. And that's why when they're out there trying to shut down a journalist, the whole story here, the entirety of this filing, this 23-page filing, is essentially that the defendant is interested in unsealing the evidence against him and allowing a journalist to make a documentary about it. Now, the argument that they make in this particular filing as well is that there is no public good that can come from it. Kind of like saying there's no public good from Donald Trump talking bad about the Biden administration. But the fact of the matter is that it's a commercially viable documentary. It is a film that people are interested in seeing and people are financially interested in backing. I know a little bit about doing something like this because we did Police State with Dinesh D'Souza. It's over there on my shelf. I'm credited in there. We both did the action sequences to help all the FBI scenes look legit, and we gave interviews. Me and Steve Friend, George Hill, Sonny Labosco, we all sat down and gave interviews about what was going on. If there's commercial viability, if something can make money and people are willing to support it financially, because it costs, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to make these things properly. If someone's willing to invest in it, it tells you there's a public interest. And if there's a public interest, it is roundly determined that this is something that can stay in the public domain, that it's appropriate journalism. We have a journalist being attacked for doing the thing that he's done that far predates probably even this character who is making the arguments, this character from DOJ. It probably even predates his law license. Trevor's been doing this for a long time. And that alone is enough to show me that one, people care. And two, the government needs to stay out of this. They don't get to be the arbiter of what truths we're allowed to have. Very, very concerning stuff, folks. Like end of the republic type stuff. End of the republic worse than changing and allowing us to directly elect senators or even directly elect the president of the United States. So that comes to this election right here. Here's where we sit. analysis by CNN talking about the most important questions that the Biden-Trump debate may answer for voters. Listen, I'm telling you that the only people who are in play right now is somewhere between 10 and 12% of the population. There's 40+% of the population that is going to vote for Biden, even if they don't understand what he's about. If they have the same mentality of that man, they are wandering the world and just consuming things that come in front of them and pooping in their diapers where they poop. That is a group of people. There's another group of people that are 100% MAGA, no matter how bad or stupid the things that Donald Trump says. And he says some dumb things occasionally. We have to agree. His energy level is far better. I think that he's far more mentally competent. That's not even a debate for me. And yet, he's imperfect because he's 78 years old, and that is not young. The story that they are talking about is this is going to show whether or not Joe Biden, for 1 to 2 hours, will be able to keep it together. And that will tell us whether or not he has the physical and the mental capacity to handle the presidency for the next 4 years. That's the argument being made over at CNN. That is a wild argument, y'all. Anybody coked up enough on whatever it is that they punch in there, whatever the alchemist in the White House is able to do now that he's been on a 7 days of essentially bed rest. If there's 7 days of bed rest and he can put together a 1 to 2 hour performance, then they're going to say, yeah, look, he can obviously be president. That's insane. We've already seen what the special counsel who investigated Joe Biden said that he was a kindly man with a poor memory and didn't know what was going on. And then the alternative is they're going to be talking about the character of Donald Trump. That's what they claim is his biggest challenge. It says, while retrospective assessments of his presidency have been improving. Do you hear that? This is them admitting that as people, basically, it's not about retrospective assessments of Donald Trump's presidency. The question is this, because I think COVID is the great derailer when it comes to any arguments about Donald Trump's presidency. But let's just look at December of 2019. Where were you around Christmas time in 2019? How was your Christmas tree looking? How was your Christmas dinner? How did it cost? What were the fuel prices? What was it costing you to buy a house at that time? These are the questions I think that are relevant. If you were to compare apples to apples, nobody is doing a retrospective assessment and then positively, favorably increasing their view of Donald Trump's. What they are doing is they are bringing it against the contrast of the current situation. These campaigns are about contrast. Two people. In fact, even on the screen, look at this. One man with kind of a confused, squinty look with green behind him. That seems kind of nice. And then Donald Trump, he's got his mouth open like he's about to say an insult, and he's severely painted in black. They're doing it even on this visual representation from CNN's website as they show the two men. You see it? One man wearing a tie that is neutral. There's a time when he wasn't wearing a particularly partisan tie. Donald Trump with the red power tie like he does. It's all about contrast. And the contrast is that in contrast to the way that you finished out 2019, let's say, and even some of 2020, if you were buying a house, as I was looking, it was far better during that time than it was once the Biden presidency got under control. And they started increasing the inflation and watching those gas prices spike and watching the fact that they had to, rake up interest rates and then watching them claim a favorable economy simply because people who weren't allowed to go to work are now going back to work. This kind of nonsense. This is the argument being made. And that's why these guys have to be able to speak. I want Biden to be able to speak too, by the way. I want him to be completely unfettered. Allow him to speak as much as possible. Same thing with Donald Trump. Let them speak, lest we have to take it up another way. And Donald Trump should not have to censor himself in the middle of a presidential debate about his thoughts about the FBI, who's come for him, right? This should be a big deal. And the other question is this: what are they trying to hide as they go after and they do this Julian Assange thing? This is something that just popped out the other day, and I think it's massively important. The Biden administration trying to buy votes. What you're seeing right here, reporting from NBC. A judge halts further student loan forgiveness under the Biden repayment plan. Oh, remember how the Biden administration just promised to cancel debt that people took on without being coerced? They're not arguing whether the debt is legitimate. They're just taking it and saying you're a Democrat voter, you're an Ivy Leaguer, and people who lay bricks for a living should have to pay your student loan debt. We're going to just make the American taxpayers eat it. Now, at the end of the day, it's not that much money. It's $45 billion. We give more than that to Ukraine. So, In the long-term version of it, it's $475 billion, which is, enough to fund the Marine Corps for half a decade. That seems like a lot of money. And should they be allowed to just unilaterally do that? Well, we have this weird thing that not only has the First Amendment in it, it also has the powers of the executive and the powers of Congress. And it turns out the argument being made is that this is a completely unconstitutional thing to do, even though they've already waived certain people's debts, which is incredible, by the way. They've already bought some of these votes. Attorney General for Missouri, Andrew Bailey, killing it, files a lawsuit, got a temporary restraining order, got this injunction against them carrying this on. I'll read his statement because I think it actually matters. Why? Because it has something to do with that oath to the Constitution that this administration has completely given up on. This is Andrew Bailey. He says, quote, "During my time in the U.S. Army, I swore an oath to protect the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic. I took a similar oath to uphold the Constitution when I was sworn in as Attorney General. By attempting to saddle working Missourians with Ivy League debt, Joe Biden is undermining our constitutional structure. Only Congress has the power of the purse, not the president. And today's ruling was a huge win in the rule of law, or for the rule of law, and for every American who Joe Biden was about to force to pay off somebody else's debt," end quote. Isn't that what this is really about? Commies are always big on the socialists, the Marxists, doesn't matter what you call them. They're always big on this thing that's called OPM. You guys know what OPM is? Margaret Thatcher didn't like OPM. It's called other people's money. And at some point in time, OPM runs out, which is when countries fail and the currency has been completely debased. Joe Biden is big on giving OPM away, handing it off in order to buy votes, in order to say, hey, this is what we're into. So what are we not focusing on? We're not focusing on a administration trying to buy debt. How about this? The overseas piece of it, which has really been bothering me. You guys hear about this? It's getting minimal play on social media. This is coming from the Moscow Times. You're like, oh, okay. Is that a good source of news? I have no idea. But I know that I've seen this in multiple places, and this had the best headline. At least 6 killed in a fire at U.S.-sanctioned Moscow electronics research building. 6 people are dead when a major fire broke out. This seems like local news, right? I'm going to get there for you. Broke out on Monday. The Moscow Region Research Center that's sanctioned by Western authorities. Regional governor says that the fire engulfed the Platan Research Institute building, and that it is a producer of defense electronics. It also is responsible for distributing and producing pigments and dyestuffs that's used by the military. Do you know what they do, that defense producer? Platan, Platan. They're responsible for creating that glide bomb technology that we talked about just a couple of days ago that is being used to send weapons into Ukraine. That makes it a little bit weirder, doesn't it? Now, I don't think the Ukrainians have the ability to creep in to Moscow and burn down buildings associated with defense contractors for the Russian government. But I bet you the United States does. You think this was just an accidental fire? I guess it's possible. Were there foreign assets involved? Also possible. We're not paying attention to this stuff because when you have these things happen, it's best if they control the media and that this is not a real story. Shouldn't this be like a victory lap? They're like, hey, listen, we sanctioned these people and now they're almost out of business because they had this catastrophic fire and we're feeling really good about it. They're able to basically retrofit dummy bombs from the Soviet era in the Russian arsenal and turn them into precision-guided munitions, or at least mostly precision. They're able to put a GPS pack, a set of wings, some actuators that can glide them in where they want to go and drop up to 5,000-pound bombs. They were talking in the articles we read last time, 5,000 to all the way down to like 500-pound bombs, and drop those suckers where they want for cheaper than what we can do with what we call JDAMs, like 50% of the cost on the low end. Why are we not paying attention to that? Meanwhile, additionally, because now I got my eyes looking over at what's going on with this Russia-Ukraine conflict, you start seeing this stuff. This is double headlines coming from Reuters, both of them from today. International criminal courts issuing arrest warrants for 2 of Russia's top defense ministers. A leading general and a defense minister, the International Criminal Court in The Hague is issuing these for war crimes. We're setting up this sort of just war piece, right? There they are. Sorry, I got to put them on the screen. There they are. And then also, Vladimir Zelensky. What's he doing? He's purging his state guard for so-called assassination plots. Now, we're just supposed to take that. We're just supposed to take that on faith, I guess, because Reuters says it, and they're very much non-political. Having sat in a room with Reuters reporters, I would say that they are, in fact, the opposite of that. They are activists as well, just like everybody else we see in the news media. But the claim is that there was an assassination plot a month ago. So they're getting rid of people. Now, I don't want to see politicians assassinated at all, ever. I don't think that's a good tool. It doesn't usually work out the way that people think it will anyway. So that's not a great move. But it is interesting that Zelensky is solidifying power and tossing out people that he claims are not loyal. He says that they are cooperating with the Russian government, planning to assassinate him and other officials. Maybe that's true. Maybe it is. But he's staffing up the guard service, is what they call it. These are the people that are designed. These are their protective detail. This is like their secret service. And he's moving people out and moving other people in. He says that the agency must be cleared of anyone who chooses not Ukraine for themselves, or if they discredit the state guard service. So he's been moving his people in there. So we've got potential assassination plots happening and cleanup and solidifying of power by Zelensky. You've got international warrants being issued to Russian generals that will never face this stuff because the Hague has no ability to reach into Russia and pull them out. And we've got fires at defense contractors in weapon systems that were recently identified in major media. I don't know. These are just three little data points that I look at. It leads me to believe that this October surprise we keep talking about, the possibility of not having a real election that represents elections like we've seen in my lifetime, can very easily be increased conflict with Russia, which we keep marching ever more closely towards. But by all means, Julian Assange is free. So celebrate that for the Biden administration, right? These shiny objects that we see out there. I'm telling you, free speech is important because we need people to be able to express themselves. Oh, by the way, here, this is the fire of the building. If you guys want to see it, I actually grabbed this from social media. So this is where we were validating some of this stuff. It's a pretty serious file. It's like six plus floors of that building are on fire. It's like 10 seconds of that. So nothing really crazy there. The reason why I wanted you guys to be able to see why we need to be able to have freedom of speech is because we need the crazies to reveal themselves. And this should be your palate cleanser, but it's not. This is just something that exists, and I had to see it, and I think you should see it. These are the people that are running our country. This is why we are such an unserious person. This is why the power of the purse doesn't reside in Congress. I'm going to show you two Congress people losing their ever-loving minds, using their freedom of speech to be fools. But this is why the executive has taken all the power and why Congress has willingly given it up. Because these are theater performers. They are crappy stage actors, right? It's Hollywood for ugly people. Although one of these people is less ugly than the other. Here's AOC hyping a crowd of dozens, literally dozens of people in the Bronx. I have spoken to bigger crowds than this year, and I would never consider letting my hair down like this. But go ahead and these are the serious people that are making decisions with our billions and billions and sometimes trillions of dollars.
Yeah, look, leave her so you know they think it. Cheap and expensive, you know the difference. You know what it's getting, you know what it's giving. Here, reels, butter, bear. I can survive in the coldest conditions. Rain all day, tone they spin. This wash, soap in the dishes. I'm black pressure like boa constrictors. Soup, new, daddy, not gon' do. I'm in Miami, I pull up on cruise ship. You in Miami for ocean. Let's go!
Yeah, She's angry at AIPAC. She's fighting for freedom in Gaza because that's what American Congress people are about. It gets worse, by the way. Somebody just said copyright striking coming in the chat. Yeah, I'm sure. There goes our monetization over on YouTube. Lucky for you, we don't monetize to the first part. All right. This is what it was hyping for. Jamal Bowen is having a pretty tough time getting reelected in his own district, which is not great for him, but it's great for us because then we get to hear this. I'm only going to play you like 10 seconds of this man, and you tell me how we have gotten to the point where these are the Congress people that are making decisions about our money. He's very, very mad about the Jews, folks.
We're not gonna show fucking AIPAC the power of the motherfucking South Bronx. People ask me why I got a foul mouth. What am I supposed to do? You coming after me. You coming after my family. You coming after my children. I'm not supposed to fight back. I'm not supposed to fight back. We're gonna show them.
Yikes, right? Yeah, as one of you just pointed out, he was a principal. Why he got a foul mouth? Look, all adults can swear. I do it sometimes too. I'm sure you do as well. But what a weird look for an elected official. He's going to show you about the MF in South Bronx, which is one of the smallest parts of his district. He was actually just like, there's a really funny little clip of him talking to the person that is trying to primary him. And the gentleman's like, why do you always talk about black and brown people? Like, there's other people in this district, which represents, Westchester. It's like Yonkers and some other parts, New Rochelle. It's not all just like black and brown people living in the Bronx. In fact, that's the smallest part of his district, but okay. The other thing that also surprised me is he went with like sleeveless shirts. Always a good look. And a big belly. Weird times. This is the unserious people that lead us. And they want us to pay attention to shiny objects while they go out there and spend the money. And they're mad at the Jews. Anyway, if you guys don't know about that stuff, now you know. You should. It just blows my mind that this is considered acceptable speech and Donald Trump is the problem, right? How many times did we hear the word fight? Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to do all these things? It's the same. This is what politicians sound like. And since you guys, by popular demand, I've seen this in the chat enough times, it is true.
Già troppa frociaggine.
It's all the frociaggine. 100%. Okay. Let me tell you about my friends at the merch store, my buddy Garrett O'Boyle. Guys, you can get your own Kyle Seraphin shirt, Kyle Seraphin show shirt at the-suspendables.com. Again, it's the-suspendables.com. The promo code Kyle will save you 10%. Saves me nothing. It gives me nothing. We just do it because we want to keep Garrett busy, because otherwise he watches clips like this and loses his mind. The-suspendables.com. KYLE to save that 10%. That's all we're going to say about that right now. And I'll show you right there. Look, it's a pretty good looking shirt. I have nothing to do with this. It actually says in very small letters, The Kyle Seraphin Show, so people can know what the TKSS is. And that's it. Let's do this palate cleanser because I feel like we've earned it. But before we finish the palate cleanser, can we just remember a little longer version where I hope the Trump team is paying attention? They've won the argument. Okay? The argument is right here. It's on my little sheet that I leave on my desk. The clear contrast is they did a crap job for the last 4 years. He did a better job. An imperfect but better job. They didn't open up the borders. We didn't have a tranny flag instead of an American flag. By the way, you saw the American flags there on that rally, did you not? Abortion for all was not the message of the day. White people are bad does not win. It's just a strange take. And the fact is that Trump continues to talk about things like bringing back the America we remember. The alternative is destroy everything, which is what we're hearing. So they don't win. This is the argument. This is how you do it. I hope he stays in the pocket here. Somebody send this to Trump. Send this to the Trump team. Send Bill Burr along to him, maybe.
Never address how women argue, which I think is a core of a lot of that shit. You know, and I got to tell you something, man. Like, I never knew how women argued. But after 20 years of losing every significant battle in a relationship, I finally figured out how they argued. I'm going to tell you something. I'm starting to turn this franchise around. I have begun a winning tradition. This is how they argue, as far as I can tell. All right? If they're right, they argue the point. And they stay on point and make sure you stay on point until you're down on your knees, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. All right? No problem with that. Totally respect it. But here's the thing. If they're wrong, they go rogue. They go off-road. They start thinking of shit you're sensitive about. Maybe you don't get along with your dad. And in their head, they just start concocting this evil statement. Totally designed, this desperate Hail Mary attempt to make you so fucking mad, you just call him a cunt.
This also was relevant to the chat that was going on yesterday. So if you guys know, if you're in the live chat, then you know. Make sure you guys have hit the like out there. He's right. You just take the knee and win. Do not let them emotionally trigger you. The argument is already over, and we have won the argument when it comes to who is better in the contrast. The contrast is clear. Yeah? Let's do a little palate cleanse here. We did probably my favorite little bit that I've ever shown was the combination of all the alpha influencers who tell you how to live your day to the minute and how to do it. This is a play on that, and it's quite amusing. Every once in a while I come across these things that I like people that make fun of what they do or the way that they see things. And all these folks that are trying to tell you how to optimally live your life, they are not you, so they don't know. But this guy's got a little take on it that you guys will get a kick up. Apparently, you're probably not waking up early enough if you want to be successful. So here you go. This is your inspiration for the day.
Let me just start off by saying this. If you're not up by 2 a.m., you'll never be successful. You'll never be successful. Let me walk you through a successful person, aka me, morning routine. I've got an alarm set for 1:25 a.m. and an ice bath already prepared next to my bed. Immediately upon awakening, I cold plunge. Don't let Big Pharma fool you. You want to spike your cortisol levels as high as possible, as early as possible. I'm dressing out the door by 1:32. I train lower body. I come back. I eat 6 ounces of duck liver and a pint of egg yolk. Just the yolk, never any carbs. Carbs make you fat. From there, I go right into my prayer, right into my breath work, right into my meditation, right into my gratitude exercises, right into my 3-week vision board, right into my 5-month vision board, right into my 3-year vision board. I go back to the gym, I train upper body, and I finish with 15 minutes in an infrared sauna, 15 minutes in a charcoal sauna, and 22 minutes in a steam room. I do 4 rounds of that. I come back, wake up the kids, get them ready for it. I've done more by 6 a.m. than you've done this entire week. And that is why I have a podcast studio in my home and you don't. Because of morning routines like this and nothing to do with the trust fund my father set up for me.
It had nothing to do with the trust fund. That's why he's got the podcast studio. It has everything to do with the fact that he wakes up at 1:25 a.m. My buddy who follows Jocko and generally likes Jocko hates the Jocko pictures of him like showing like a pool of sweat and his watch. He's like, what did you do, bro? And my friend is a stud super athlete, and he is from Long Island, so he is a combative guy to begin with. Anyway, for all of you guys that know what I'm talking about, these weirdos, he didn't even mention eating almonds like Steve Friend, who's already done like 13 miles by the time this guy's getting into his ice path. So there you go. Thanks for joining us this morning. We enjoyed being here. I hope you guys are getting an idea of what's going on out there. You're seeing the dangly thing. We got to watch this developing situation overseas, because that does seem like where our election is going to get stolen. What a time to be alive. Thanks for being here with the Kyle Seraphin Show. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. You guys heard it early on. We're going to break that 1,000 with your help. We're going to beat the censorship mob and routine that is going on, and share this thing. Make sure you've liked it wherever you're watching it, and we will see you again tomorrow. I expect every bit that Wednesday will live up to being a weird Wednesday. There's no reason why it won't. So we'll see you then. God bless you, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.